the vibrant and complex backdrop of South Africa, a nation rich in culture, history, and diversity, yet grappling with its past and present challenges. It follows the journey of a young woman named Thandiway, whose arrogance and privilege blind her to the struggles of others, until a series of humbling experiences reshape her heart and perspective. The Golden Cage. In the affluent suburb of Sandton, Johannesburg, Thandiway Mokoena lived a life many could only dream of. At 24, she was the only daughter of a wealthy mining magnate, raised in a sprawling mansion with private schools, luxury cars, and holidays in Cape Town's Camps Bay. Thandiway was beautiful, with sharp cheekbones and a commanding presence, but her personality was less endearing. She was known for her sharp tongue, quick to dismiss anyone she deemed beneath her, whether it was the household staff, her classmates at Wits University, or even her own cousins from less privileged backgrounds. Thandiway's days were filled with shopping sprees at Sandton City, sipping cocktails at rooftop bars, and posting curated glimpses of her glamorous life on Instagram. Her rudeness was not always overt. It was in the way she ignored the security guard at her estate's gate, snapped at waiters, or mocked her peers for their cheap clothes. To her, the world revolved around her desires, and South Africa's stark inequalities were merely background noise. One afternoon, while driving her sleek BMW through the bustling streets of Jozi, Thandiway nearly collided with a minibus taxi. She leaned out her window, shouting insults at the driver, a weathered man named Sipho, who simply shook his head and drove on. "These people," she muttered, speeding off, unaware that this encounter would mark the beginning of her unraveling. The wake-up call. Thandiway's father, Mr. Mokoena, was a man of contrasts. A self-made billionaire, he had risen from humble beginnings in Soweto, but his success had distanced him from his roots. He adored Thandiway, but was increasingly troubled by her entitled behavior. One evening, during a tense family dinner, he announced a decision that shocked her. She was to spend the summer volunteering at a community center in Alexandra, one of Johannesburg's poorest townships, just a few kilometers from their mansion. "You're out of touch, Thandiway," he said sternly. "You need to see how the other half lives." Thandiway scoffed, her manicured nails tapping the mahogany table. "Alex? That place is filthy. I'm not going there to babysit poor people." Her father's face hardened, and for the first time, he refused to back down. "You'll go, or you'll lose your allowance, your car, everything." Reluctantly, Thandiway agreed, expecting to breeze through the experience with minimal effort. The next week, she arrived at the Alexandra Community Center, a modest building surrounded by shacks and littered streets. The air smelled of dust and cooking fires, a far cry from Sandton's polished avenues. She wrinkled her nose, clutching her designer handbag as if it might be snatched away. The center's director, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Mama Naledi, greeted Thandiway with a warm smile. "We're happy to have you, Thandiway. You'll be helping with our literacy program for children." Thandiway rolled her eyes, already plotting ways to escape. The children of Alex. Thandiway's first day at the center was a disaster. She arrived late, dressed in impractical heels, and barely acknowledged the children, who ranged from 6 to 12 years old. They were a lively bunch, their clothes worn but their eyes bright with curiosity. Thandiway, however, saw only chaos. When a boy named Lerato accidentally spilled juice on her shoes, she snapped, "Watch it, you clumsy kid." The room fell silent, and Mama Naledi's disapproving glance stung more than Thandiway expected. Over the next few days, Thandiway's attitude alienated her from the children and staff. She complained about the heat, the lack of Wi-Fi, and the boring tasks. But the children, resilient and perceptive, began to challenge her in unexpected ways. Lerato, the boy she'd scolded, was particularly persistent. Despite her coldness, he'd sit near her during reading sessions, asking questions about the books or her life. "Why do you always look so angry?" he asked one day, his small face earnest. Thandiway brushed him off, but his words lingered. She began to notice the children's realities. Many lived in one-room shacks, walked miles to the center, and ate only the simple meals provided there. Yet they laughed, shared, and dreamed of futures as doctors, teachers, or soccer stars. Their resilience puzzled her, clashing with her belief that wealth defined happiness. The taxi driver's lesson. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day, Thandiway's car wouldn't start. Stranded in Alexandra as dusk fell, she had no choice but to take a minibus taxi home. To her surprise, the driver was Sipo, the same man she'd insulted weeks earlier. He recognized her immediately but said nothing, his eyes fixed on the road. The taxi was cramped, filled with passengers chatting in Zulu, Xhosa, and English. Thandiway felt out of place, clutching her bag tightly. When the taxi broke down halfway to Sandton, the passengers groaned but quickly began helping Sifo push it to the side of the road. Thandiway, however, stayed seated, muttering about her ruined evening. Sifo approached her, his voice calm but firm. "Miss, we all help here. No one is too big for that." Humiliated but desperate to get home, Thandiway joined the others, her hands trembling as she pushed the heavy vehicle. The passengers cheered when the engine sputtered back to life, and for the first time, Thandiway felt a flicker of connection to these strangers. On the ride to Sandton, Sipo shared his story. He'd once been a teacher but turned to driving taxis to support his family after his school closed. "Life humbles you," he said. "It's not about what you have, but what you give." Thandiway didn't respond, but his words echoed in her mind. Cracks in the facade. Back at the community center, Thandiway began to soften, though she fought it. She started listening to the children's stories, learning about their dreams and struggles. Lorado, in particular, became her shadow, sharing tales of his late mother and his hopes of becoming a pilot. One day, he gave her a crude drawing of an airplane, scribbling "Thank you, Cici Thandiway" on it. The gesture touched her, and she found herself tucking the drawing into her bag. Mama Naledi noticed the change. "You're starting to see them, aren't you?" she said one afternoon. Thandiway nodded, her usual defenses down. "I didn't realize how hard it is for them. I've been selfish." The turning point came during a community event at the center, where Thandiway helped organize a soccer tournament. She spent hours decorating, serving food, and cheering for the kids. For the first time, she felt genuine joy in their laughter, untainted by her usual need for validation. When Lorado's team won, he ran to her, hugging her tightly. Thandiway, usually averse to physical affection, hugged him back, tears pricking her eyes. The mirror of truth. As the summer drew to a close, Thandiway's time in Alexandra forced her to confront her privilege. She thought of her father's journey from Soweto to Sandton, realizing how far she'd strayed from the values he'd once held. She began volunteering beyond her required hours, teaching the children to read and even organizing a fundraiser to buy books for the center. One evening, she apologized to Mama Naledi for her early rudeness. "I thought I was better than everyone here," she admitted. "I was wrong," Mama Naledi smiled. "Humility isn't weakness, Thandiway. It's strength. It's seeing the world as it is, not as you want it to be." Thandiway also tracked down Sipo, offering a heartfelt apology for her behavior during their first encounter. He waved it off with a grin. "You're learning, miss. That's what matters. A new path." When Thandiway returned to Sandton, she was a different person. She sold her BMW, donating the proceeds to the community center, and began advocating for education programs in townships. Her Instagram, once filled with selfies and luxury, now showcased the children of Alexandra, their stories, and ways to support them. Her old friends drifted away, unable to understand her transformation, but Thandiway found new purpose in her work. She enrolled in a social work program at WITS, determined to address South Africa's inequalities. Her father, proud of her growth, shared stories of his own humble beginnings, strengthening their bond. Thandiway also stayed close to Lorato, sponsoring his education and cheering at his school events. Years later, as she stood at the community center's ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new library she'd helped fund. Thandiway looked out at the crowd, Sipo, Mama Naledi, Lorado, and countless others who'd shaped her journey. She was no longer the rude young lady of Sandton, but a woman grounded in humility, gratitude, and a commitment to change. Thandiway's story spread across South Africa, inspiring others to bridge the gap between privilege and poverty. In a nation still healing from its divided past, her transformation was a small but powerful reminder that change begins with seeing others not as less but as equal. And in Alexandra, the children she'd once dismissed now called her Sissy Thandiway, their hero, proof that even the hardest hearts can soften in the face of truth.